I think everything's working out okay. So just make sure everything is good. Okay, it looks like we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And today is an interesting day because we're currently working with Bforartists here in the community, and we're starting with the Q&A and critique number 52, the Let's Bforartists edition. So this is the second chapter of season 2 here in the Bforartists Discord community, which is a special event for me because this is one of my pet projects that I've been volunteering with for a long time, and lately a lot of my code has been going into it and I've been working the documentation. And also we have 2 invited guests today who have submitted art from last week. We have Steinn here and Slink. They both have been working with Blender and photography as well. So let's start the event on Discord. Yo. So we have Slink here and Steinn, and we're going to start with them and looking at their art at the beginning, and then on top of that we'll be doing a short Q&A of the Bforartists Release, since we've just recently over the past week released a new version. And last but not least, we're going to talk about color communication with this painterly art scene that I've been working on over the past couple of hours. So we're going to be working on the colors that I choose, my process of how I work the colors, how to use colors to communicate a little bit, and work it together. And then we're going to change it right up. Like right now, it's a nighttime scene. Maybe we could change it to a daytime scene or change the mood completely. So we're going to use color and how to work it using my painterly technique within the software right at the end of today. So everyone, if you want to talk into the microphone, feel free to open up your mic. Or if you have questions or you want to share an answer, I'll be pending in the Q&A and critique chat here in Discord. I will read it out if you want me to, without a problem. And without further ado, I guess we can start with some art. So Slink, you have been very patient. You came here 1 hour earlier, so I wanted to ask you how you're doing.
I'm doing good. And you?
I'm very good as well. And let me just...
Nice.
My screen on... There we go. I was using the wrong screen on my stream. Sorry about that. Okay, so Slink, let's take a look at your art here. So you have 2 pieces. One of them is a monitor and another one is a character based off it's a fan art, I guess you could say. So,
yes.
So tell us a little bit about it.
Somewhat popular YouTuber.
Yeah, he's a popular YouTuber.
Yeah. Like I made the CRT monitor after I made like this dude from the monitor because I was like that.
Good. Excellent. And your other piece is from the actual character, correct?
Yes. Wait here.
Let me just dig it up.
This is the YouTuber in question.
All right, let me just load him up. And here's the piece with the jersey and everything.
He makes quite impressive videos, to be honest. But he only uploads like 1 a month.
One a month. I guess it takes a lot of work to get it going.
It does.
So pyrocynical.
Yes.
Okay.
Mostly talking about video games and memes.
And here is the character right here.
Yeah.
Nice. Looking good. Okay, so here we have the piece. I've loaded it up, and here he is in full 3D form with a very cool hoodie or jersey and a very modern flat screen CRTV or monitor.
As modern as a CRT TV can get.
That's right. Very nice. Okay, so tell me, what inspired you to do this piece? Why this YouTuber and why this character?
I just really like the YouTuber, and he made some pretty nice videos. And I thought the character was easy enough to make, so I did it.
Okay, so I have a question for you now. How did you do the jersey? How did you get this fur and the textures? This is impressive.
Texture I made procedurally a while back for like a jar, like this cloth your grandma covers a jar of jelly beans or something, I don't know.
Wow.
And then I felt like if I make this texture tiny, then it kind of looks like cloth, like some weeded cloth. Then I just slap it on there.
And then the fur is with geometry nodes or hair particles?
No, I used a very old, very ruggish hair particle system. I made like one layer, tweaked some settings. Then I make like the particles count times 10.
And how did you vary the density?
I didn't. Magic.
This was pure by accident.
Yes. It's just doing its thing.
Very nice. Okay.
Or it could be also something with the child particles and how that works, but I don't know.
Possibly, yeah.
It's just magic.
And did you
to
model
me.
the jersey as well? Was this sculpted or designed or simulated?
Like I made like multiple sims on top of sims. First I grabbed myself like a basic human. There's like an add-on, human primitives, I think it's called.
Okay.
Where you have just like a male human with no rig, so I just slapped the normal rig from Rigify on it. Then I made like you made like an marmor set. You make like cloths and with two planes which are like coming together in some seams. Then I cleaned those seams up. Then I simmed again for the pose. Like I animate the character from one to another keyframe to this pose. And it worked somewhat.
Yeah, it's very effective. Very effective. And your lighting. I remember checking out your art in some previous episodes. And I think out of all your pieces, this is probably has some of the best lighting that I've seen.
Yay!
I especially love like the way that you use the cold blue light on his face with his expression and have like a warm pink light coming out on the other side to fill out his shape and rim. It really makes it pop, so well done there. J Bar agrees here. She says it's a nice glow with nice lights. And also Crab says he loves watching Pyro. His video essays are super good. Very nice. So I noticed you've uploaded the monitor. Is this the same monitor from this art piece?
Not exactly. From the art piece, the monitor, if you look at it, from the art piece,
Yeah.
what you see is basically what you get. I only modeled the parts you see. Like the grid, it's only on this side of this face, which you can see. And also there's no plug on the back side. Like it is just basically what you see, what you get.
What you see is what you get.
So I basically took that model, tweaked it a bit, cried, tweaked it a bit more, and then I uploaded it to Gumroad.
Very nice. I can see you got the power. It's a VGA monitor. Very nice. It's got some nice textures onto it. Big screws. Very nice.
It's free.
And it's free, exactly. So it's a nice flat screen monitor. And you also have like a CRT texture or shader on the actual monitor screen?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Because I don't know what I was thinking, but like the only good way to make like a monitor in CG is like to make the monitor in CG. So you basically to take those, I don't know how many tiny dots there are, replicate the pattern and scale it up.
Very nice. Fun fact, one of my first models that I ever made, ever in my history of 3D modeling, was on my CRT monitor.
Oh, damn.
Let's see if I can dig it up. 1 second.
Yeah, but if you could actually look at the node tree for the CAT if you download it.
I will definitely. 1 second. Back to the 90s.
Yes.
Okay, so you got the blend file. Does this come with the textures packed in? Or do I
I
download?
think yes, if I remember correctly. I always press like pack files 10 times before I upload anything.
Makes sense. Okay, let me just take a
Then
quick look.
OBJ and FBX for, yeah, because maybe people don't like Blender or something, I don't know. Or you just want to use it in the
with
game.
FBX you can use it in the game engine without a problem. For which version of Blender was this made?
I use 3.2, but I didn't use any advanced stuff. Like geometry is basically polymodeling I use. So it should be still working for all the Blender versions.
Excellent. Alright, let's load it up. And then we can move on to the next segment. I'm happy to be reviewing your art again, Slink.
Yeah!
I was missing it. It had nearly been maybe a month and a half, nearly 2 months between episodes. So it's good to be back.
Yeah.
It's good to see you again.
You too, man. You too.
Within the past times with these projects with the monitor character and Pyro, have you been working on other projects?
I'm still working on the guitar.
Oh yes,
I'm now on the texturing side, but Armpine isn't having it with the model. It's maybe too complex.
There we go.
Please be textured, please be textured, please be textured.
Ah, yes, beautiful, it
But
worked. It's pink.
yeah, everything but the screen texture wasn't, because the screen texture I used wasn't CC0, so like, well.
Yeah,
Oh well.
sometimes if you want to redistribute assets, you got to make sure licensing is clean. You're right. But it looks good. I love the new CRT shader. My old projects, this was back in 2006, maybe 2007. Of my old work. Here we go, objects. This was one of my first models as well. Look at that.
Damn.
So I remember that. I made my old tower as well. 1 for 1.
Wow. What a tower.
Yeah, it was an Pentium 1 or 2 maybe. Made the keyboard as well. The mouse, that one's something else that I designed.
And like a true man with a plate and a fork.
Yeah. These were my first models.
Very nice.
As I was learning how to model.
I think Softimage?
This was done in
What is that?
TrueSpace.
What?
So TrueSpace is a software developed by Calligraphy. It was bought out in 2008 during the market crash by Microsoft, and then they released a free version and discontinued it in 2009. More or less.
Damn. Kind of sad.
Yeah, it is sad. I was very sad. But I used it for 5 years afterwards. But yeah, the details are great. Oh, I love the texturing as well. Very nice. It's an excellent asset to use.
You could like theoretically load any image for the CRT monitor. It should work.
Alright, so let's take a look at the shading.
It's not too big. Just somewhat big.
Right, so where do I put the image? In here?
Yes.
Alright. Let's load up the image from last week by Alan Watt, and we'll see how it looks. There it is. 69 now on 4.3, so it's a little squashed, and it looks excellent. Look at that.
Yeah. The image texture also has like its own UV, so you can change the stretch.
Nice. I really like this.
And if you zoom in really hard into the screen, you can see the dots.
That's excellent. And this comes with your whole product. This is an excellent deal. Well, thanks for sharing this link. Highly appreciate it. And it's really good to see you do some excellent work, especially with your creative concept of making the jersey, which I will have to watch back on this to actually follow it step by step. But I guess we'll move on. So Steinn, are you still here?
I'm still here.
Excellent. Let me just check the sound. Okay, so Steinn, we have 2 pieces from you, and from what I know, you have been working with photography and Blender for quite some time, and you have been extremely active here on the server, sharing many resources, inspiration, and other useful tidbits and content, which I think I'm very thankful for that. But I wanted to get to know a little bit more about your art and your pieces, so let me just pull them up. Here they are. So which piece would you like to start with?
I don't know. Either is fine.
Either is fine. Okay, let me just pull up the other one. Here it is. Let's start with the planet and the hand. So here we have this piece here, which is a 16:9 widescreen piece. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. And I can see the moon, the planet. I can see this big, giant, I guess you could say, marble. What's marble?
Marble.
Marble statue holding the planet in its palm. And there's one key little thing that I notice is there's a big gashing hole inside the wrist. All right, so tell me about this piece.
So the piece was made for Earth Day last year. The Blenderness Discord server, I believe, had a challenge or something like that on the theme. And then I figured to make God's hand, and the little gash thing is where the nail would be pierced. It doesn't really work in the hand because it would just kind of rip out because there's nothing there to hold the person. So that's why the location is there.
Very interesting. And how did you do in the competition inside the server?
I cannot recall. It was a year ago.
It was
maybe
a while
more.
ago. So
Yeah.
nice. How did you make the hand? Was this modeled by subdivision or sculpted or posed?
So I took the arm and I chopped it off the human generator add-on, and then I didn't need the texture. And then I took the bump map. I don't know if I applied it or kind of used it as well, but I definitely did a bunch of sculpting to add a little bit more features and kind of tweak it a bit.
Yeah, this thumb work up here is really nice. And how did you work the textures of the planet? Was this?
I can't remember whose tutorial, but NASA has a bunch of captures of the Earth from like I think one a month, or at least there's like a varying amount of like seasons, so you can choose how much snow there is.
Oh wow.
So then I chose one that had a pretty decent amount, and then I followed a tutorial on how to do the shader and how to fix the poles and stuff. And then I did a similar for the moon, which is, it should be the right distance from the Earth.
You did it.
Uh,
Wow. You actually calculated the distance and actually modeled them to scale?
I think so. It should be right.
So I guess you had
And
to
then,
increase your view clip on your cameras to an extreme distance, I suppose.
well, I think what I did was put the scale in some setting, so that you don't have to just crank up the numbers, but it just becomes like if the value is 1, it's like 100 or 1,000 meters.
Oh, right. So you changed the scene scale.
Right.
Very well done. Smart, yeah.
And then the arms cloth is more of a cylinder that was given thickness, and then I sculpted it a bit. I don't think I did any physics sim, but I could have done probably. And then it's just a texture slapped on top of that to give the
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 vibe.
texture.
Very nice. I noticed that you have the arm that's kind of semi-transparent the further away from the hand it is.
It's like disappearing into the space.
That is right. Really cool. I like the composition as well. It's a nice play. Okay. And you have another piece as well that you are taking a look at.
Mm.
And this piece is it's an architectural piece in black and white. And so this piece here was, could you explain a little bit of the context? Wow, look at the detail.
So this was made for Curtis's black and white challenge. I shot a black and white photo, which is in a thread on Discord. It's on this. It's a room inside this place where, like, you have conferences, or kind of, or it's like a bunch of people meet together, and then this is like a classroom slash meeting room. So then I challenged myself to do it more in low poly slash not so detailed, but still kind of get stuff there. So I
Really
think the round stuff has probably the most geometry, and then I got the wall texture to add more detail, and then the floor carpet.
It is nice. I like this carpet material that you used. Very nice. I need to compete more. I'm noticing a trend here that you see in a challenge inside of a server, and you compete, you push your skills while doing it, and you get the renders out. So how did you go ahead with the lighting in this piece? I notice you have a very cool window to the right coming in and filling out the space, and also like a corridor.
Well, what's to the right of that is maybe 6 meters, and then there's like very big windows. So what I did was I took I have a picture of the outside of the clouds that day, and then I used that as, I was originally going to make it as a background, so then I split it up between like the brightness of what the image gives off and what is shown in the camera. I forget how I did it, but and then, so that's giving a bunch of the light that isn't the window shown. That one's shown, I believe, is just a flat plane with maybe some procedural texture connected to brightness. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, it should be right.
It's an interesting technique of using a photograph to help you light your world. And one particular thing I really like of this piece is your balance of shape and proportion. So you have like a big shape, big square, big wall chunk, rectangle, roof, big floor. Then you have like a medium pieces of details with the boards and the hanging decoration and the other chunks. And then you have very small details to complement those pieces. Tiny little things. Like the pen rack and the erasers and the bolts and the plug, which I consider a very nice touch of and balance of detail on almost everything. I commend you for that. That's quite good.
Thank you.
It's a tricky thing. And
Yeah.
J Bar mentions that the textures are really good. I agree there too. The normals and everything. All right. So, I wanted to ask you, would you be open to a slight constructive criticism?
Yeah, you're very much welcome to do so.
I understand you're doing a lot of low poly, but my only qualm is that the normals on your lamps are smoothed. Meanwhile, the normals on the roll hair are not.
Yep.
So that consistency kind of breaks the illusion that this could be realistic. And another thing as well is like if hair on the carpet is usually a cloth that is wrapped around or stapled in. So even though you're doing low poly, since this is a very large shape, you notice that hair on the metal hair, you have like a slight bevel on the curve hair. Hair on the plug, you have this cable where you can see the curve of the cable. So you kind of, with your level of detail concerning curvature and bevels, like here you can see some bolts. The edges of this carpet could have been beveled just a little bit. And it would have added to the realism of the shot. Even though it's low poly, if you just added a tiny bit of bevel and also smoothed out the normals of this piece as well, you could have squeezed that tiny bit more. Same with the corners of hair in the wood. There is a little bit of bevel, but you could, or hair with the wallpaper as well. Especially at the union of these large pieces, it's most noticeable that it is digital by the very sharp corners. But that's a minor detail, but I think everything else is perfect. So what is your next piece? I want to know. And what inspires you?
I have so many ideas, but life has kind of gotten in the way, and so now I'm got to finish some photography stuff, and then I can get back into Blender. But I'm kind of like a really rusty semi-intermediate, so I'm gonna start with some basic ones again, and then work my way into the personal projects.
Excellent. And do you have one particular idea that has a higher priority than the others?
Well, I plan to model is more for practice. A bunch of stuff from my photos. I've done that before, but it's not a finished project or product. It's more modeling practice. Like I would take an element from a picture of a pier, for an instance, and then I'd model out the concrete and the fence protector thing, or the side of a building that has the window, kind of basement level stuff, plus the curb. So I'm gonna find a bunch of indoor objects, and then with caliper and photo references, try to speed model as accurately as possible various stuff. But for the larger scale stuff, I have too many ideas that I probably need to organize or look back upon to see what I would prioritize.
Excellent. Sounds like you have your challenges and your plans very clear, and I like that. And you also know how to get the resources you need to get the job done and do it well.
Yep.
Piece of cake. Well, I'm going to be keeping an eye out on your next piece. Can't wait to see.
Alrighty.
I suppose since you're in your side of the world, you must be having. Do you have seasons of creative work within Blender? Sometimes you're in your photography more than you are in Blender. Is this why you feel you're a little bit rusty at the moment?
Well, in the last year, I moved twice, so that kind of both the packing before and after. That kind of put a wrench into everything. And then projects of photography kind of piled up and are a little bit in the backlog. So after kind of more settling in and then solving some other stuff, and then I get to the photography, and then I can finally return to Blender.
All right. Looks like you have a ritual to go through to get it done.
Yep.
Excellent. Sometimes I have difficulty getting back into things when I take a quick break. But I understand. Okay, so thanks, Steinn. Thanks for your submissions and your art pieces. I really like them. You're very to the point and very clear, very highly detailed. So if we go to one of my pieces here, today I wanted to discuss a little bit about color, just as an introduction, for the next 15 minutes or so, because I wanted to share something with you. And also from there, I wanted to see Iyad. Since you're here online, I wanted to ask you for the later, for 15 minutes of the show, would you like to, you are one of the core developers, would you like to come up and talk at the later end of the show?
Sure.
Nice. Because you're one of the pillars of the weekly merges, and you also have done a lot of excellent code. But without further ado, thank you, Steinn and Slink. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see more of your art and to see and talk about it more. Does anybody have, before we move on, does anyone have any questions for Slink or Steinn about their pieces? If not, let's move on. Let me just check the social networks. No questions there. Okay, no questions there, that's okay. Okay, so let's move on. So, I wanted to ask you guys a question before we begin. What is color to you, and how do you think you can use it? So there's one thing I noticed with the art pieces, that we have very subtle use of color in a very practical, realistic way. But I wanted to ask you, okay, so when you're working in 3D, or working with something slightly more stylized, or you're working with light and moods and emotions as an artist, how do you think you can use color, and what is color to you? So let's begin. The first things first, I guess you could say color is the concept of using RGB pixels that we saw on the monitor here. Color is basically where we mix the colors together at a basic sense.
Technically CMYK.
CMYK if it's printed, that's right. Or RGB if it is digital. But there is a mixture of these three colors around the spectrum of a color wheel that brings out the three different types of cones that we have in our eyes to detect the color. So the cones in our cells detect the light at different wavelengths, and with that our brain composites everything together and brings out an organic colored image to help us see where everything is. And on top of that, our eyes have the ability to detect a luminance level within around the world, from high dynamic ranges of bright light to adjusted light in the darkness. So with that, we have the principles of the color wheel based on RGB, creating the colors with slight variations, and then we have the brightness of the pixel. So Slink, I think your CRT monitor is actually an excellent illustration of this. And with that, we can create a sense of an image. This is done by Alan Watt from last week. And with that, we can see an image in color from our own monitors in the digital space. So with that, we have the ability to create and use color in our imaginations to bring out visual detection of information. And to do that, color is one of the tools to help us detect information. So let's take a closer look. So if we have color, what we want is information. We're trying to transmit information between an image. So we need contrast of luminance to create a legibility of what is light and what is dark on the monitor. But we also need contrast of colors. So contrast to luminance is what we're doing with the black and white images, which we have here, which Steinn has done very well on his 2 art pieces. Same with you, Slink. You have a very clear contrast of what is light and what is dark. The background is dark, the monitor is light. The light side and the dark side. Here we have the light of bounced around on the hand shape on the black sky. Very clear silhouette. And same with the window, the white light with the dark desk and the dark carpet fills out this contrast. So we have a luminance contrast, but in this case, one of the things that we can also work with is contrast of colors. So I'm going to load up Krita. I'm going to take a look at this piece here, and we're going to full screen it just for a moment. So this piece here that I've been working on just in the past couple of hours, I've decided to use a blue, purple, and orange look with some color contrast and things with the painterly to kind of bring out 2 vibes that I wanted to bring. So before I continue, do you guys know the theory of the significance of colors? Have you done this before? Nui has mentioned that...
No.
No? You haven't heard of color theory in marketing before? Yes, color theory, that's right. So color theory is a concept, or I guess you could say a standardization or a scientific study that people have done with different types of groups of people to talk about the emotions of color. Talking about also the concept. But you've brought up a good question. Color is similar to visual musical notes. That is true. So depends how you play them together, changes the meaning of the color. Because our eyes actually fool us all the time. So sometimes a gray color beside a yellow could appear blue, but if a gray color is beside a blue, it could appear something else, depending on the communication of the colors around the world, your view. But color theory, or color meaning, I guess you could say. In publicity, color is often used to explain different types of emotions, and they've categorized them into a number of different, I guess you could say, groups of dominant colors. So for example, you'll find often that the colors yellow could be used for toys and games and happy or fun, summery kind of vibes. Meanwhile, a black color would be used for something serious and highly performant and elegant and powerful. Or a green one would be used for healthy food products, or some cream that is good for the skin, or things that would bring soothing comfort and rest. And depending on the context, yeah, red could be anger, or it could be love, it could be passion. It could be also violence or danger. And yellow could also be used as disgust, or other things as well, or yellowish green. So, Steinn mentioned that he has dipped his toes into it, but he can't recall too much. That's okay. So this is just a quick summary. Obviously, color is very subjective. But what makes color subjective? Contrast to colors. So colors has meaning, but the meaning can be subjective. Okay? So the reason why this happens is because if we create a new document and we go back to color theory, basically color is like a spectrum, but the spectrum goes around and round. So we often see things that are infrared, which is around this like this purplish color, to ultraviolet, which is kind of like this purple color. But for some reason, our brains kind of loop around our detection of these wavelengths so that it turns into a circle. So this circle of colors kind of loops around and creates this kind of concept of communication between the contrast of the wavelengths. So if we take a look at purple, purple is kind of like the other side of green. So green is a contrasting color of purple. Red is a contrasting color of like this turquoise bluish color, and orange is a contrast of a more deep purple color, and yellow is a contrast of, you know, it works that way. But if we take a closer look at the wheel, we also have the concept of luminance and saturation. So if we take a look at the center of the wheel, usually things either become 100% luminant or 100% or 0% saturated. So it becomes white or gray, grayish white. So if we take a look at the outside of the circle, this is control, like this particular circle, there are many ways. But with this one, we can have the luminance is 0, almost 0 at the outside, but 1% or really bright in the center. And the saturation also is driving as well, is driven by the luminance, and we see some colors that are more saturated closer to the outside, but they're still bright, and less saturated the more bright things are. So those three things of hue, which is the circle around it, and the luminance, which is the brightness, and the saturation, which is the strength of the color, helps us define the way that colors communicate to each other. So let's start thinking about this image that we have here. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to just take a screen capture of this, just so we can paint it. Now I'm going to create a new image. We'll paste this image in as on monitor. Just bring it up like this. Make it nice and big, like that. So this is the image that we're going to work with. And we're going to take a look at how we can make these colors communicate and talk with each other intentionally. So there are many pieces of art that we can see around the world or in everywhere where color is a very important thing or factor of how we work with art. So let's take a look at famous art or paintings. Just grab a couple of random ones. So for example, here, by Johannes. This is a very typical piece that's very similar to what you guys were working with, where you have a dark background, a light, and a lit character. So here we have two colors or three colors that are dominant. Two of them is yellow, blue and yellow, and the other colors is this reddish and pink with the other grays and all in between. So if we take this image and we go back to the software and we take a closer look, we can see here in the color wheel that we have this, I'm just going to pick up a color. Whoops, sorry. Select this color. So we have this pinkish color, we have this bluish color, we have this yellowish color, and we have this orangish color, and we have this reddish color over here, and we have this kind of like this creamier white color, and also we have the shades in between, like dark blue, whoops, over here, dark blue, dark orange or dark yellow, the dark orange over here, and we also have this kind of like this darker, more richer red here to bring out the colors and the shapes, and also this dark skin color, bounced skin color over here, which is kind of over here. So if we take a look at the color wheel, if you see this yellow color up here, this orange color, it's at one end of the spectrum, and then we take a look at the red color, which is beside it over here, but if we go to the blue color, it jumps to the other side. So we have up here, let's make this a bit bigger so you can see it a bit more. So in the color wheel, we have a point up here, we have another point over here, and we have these 2 points which are kind of like sitting together beside each other, which is the red and the yellow. But we also have this bluish color, which kind of is on the other side of the spectrum. Because it is on the other side of the spectrum, this blue color on her bandana contrasts heavily with the yellow and the reds. So this blue color is kind of like a triadic complementary color, which means the contrast of color with the brightness of the dark and the light of the actual light is bringing out the shape of a language that you want to express, that she has a really cool bandana and that she's looking at the camera, or the painter in this case. And in this case, with my art piece here, I need to think about, okay, color contrast a little bit. Obviously mine is, this is pre-render, but I would need to work with this a little bit to bring out the contrast. So let's do an analysis. Okay, so I'm working with color and I want to create contrast. So in this case, I'm using like this blue color. I'm using this kind of like this reddish color, or a reddish yellow. I'm using like this these gray tones of reddish and gray blues over here, and using like a dark oranges. But in basic concept, and I'm using like this purple color up here as well. So these colors that I'm working with, I'm using this blue color complemented by this kind of purplish color, and then it goes to this red color. So I'm using these colors over here, and I've got a tiny bit of green over here and this yellow color way at the other side to bring out something else. Okay, so we got yellow, purples and blues all along here. So I can start thinking, okay, do these colors have good contrast? In my percentage of the image, if I duplicate this, duplicate it and make it very blurry. Let's do a Gaussian blur, super blurry, and hit OK. It's probably going to be a bit too blurry. If we take a look at these colors that I have here, okay, it's still calculating. 47%, 70%. Blur always is very slow. 94%. There we go. So I can see that the yellow and the purples are kind of like the dominant colors. And in this case, we can see that there is a little bit of contrast between those two. But we can obviously maybe add a bit more greens to bring out more contrast. And with the blues and the yellows, those are okay, those are contrasted okay. But with my purples, I need a slightly more greens inside my shot to bring it out. So, contrast of color is one thing, but we also need to think about the communication between colors. So if we take a look at my communication of colors, it is very noisy. You can see that my colors are not contrasting too much with the luminance, so I need to improve that. But I can also work with, like, okay, so if I use the color wheel, let's just get a color wheel, just any color wheel with the gradients. I need a color wheel gradient. There we go, that's better. So if we take a look at this color wheel here, which is exactly the one I wanted, if I take this concept and I copy this image and I put it here, this color wheel gives me a sense of, okay, so I have this like, let's do some drawing here, move it up. So if I get this bright red so you can see it. So this blue is kind of like here, this yellow is kind of like way over here. We got a blue here, and we've got like this darkness over here. We got like this darkness over here. We've got another like reddish dark over here. And we've got this purple over here. We start to see that because of the center area, we can start to see some communication between the different pieces. So for example, if this blue is contrasting with my yellow, that's okay. But then I have these pieces here, which are like talking in a quieter voice, more grays between these two contrasts. And I'm using this purple color, which is kind of like, as you can see, it's creating a triangle between the pieces. And I can use like different colors in these particular areas here, like this one, this one, this one, or I could just use everything in between here to communicate between the two. So I can use my luminance, or I can use my desaturation to bring out different colors of the different wheel. So how do we do this in 3D? So if we have this particular piece here, and I just render it out, it's going to take a moment. Whoops, that's not the render, that's the reference. I need to turn off the sequencer. Where is it? Post-processing, sequencer turn off. So if I go into the compositor, let's take a look. And let's hit render. What I need to do is I need to make sure that my color language between the purples and the blues has a nice conversation with the opposite end of the spectrum. So this conversation that I have between the colors is extremely important, because this will help me to complement how these two colors, or these three dominant colors and the contrast, communicate with each other. How do they sing? What's their harmony? What's their music like? How do the colors work together for the actual contrast? So I need to think about, okay, so if I have a very saturated orangey green, yellowish color, I need to make the colors communicate. So for example, if this green is too bright, which is way over here, I should bring it down, make it slightly more yellow, and maybe make it darker or lighter. So I need to start thinking about these colors and start working them. So let's see if it's finished rendering. Still rendering. It's going to take a moment. So if I go back to my image and hide all of these, you can see that my image has a very strong yellowish green color, which is okay, fighting with the purples and the blues. But then I have kind of like this out of the way red. So my blue and my pink is fighting here, but I have this out of the way red. So the contrast to the red is not looking so great. So I need to think about that and think, okay, so part of my shot, I was inspired by this red frame here, but inside the shot, I'm going to have to think about changing that. So if I change this red color and I use like a filter, so I go into my filters and I go and adjust my hue and saturation and values. I could choose, for example, a particular, sorry, let's just, not that one. Levels. So in my levels, I could, no, not levels, where are my RGB sliders? Color adjustment curves, there we go. So my RGB sliders, I can choose to control all of them or choose a particular channel. So this red channel is being kind of it's fighting too much for attention with the purple. So what I can do is I can lower the power of the red with the saturation to make it, let me just grab this. I can lower the redness so that it becomes more of a complement or more of a gray color. So for example, so that's saturated, I can bring it out or make it more bluish, and I can start to remove a little bit of the reds. And I can go to my greens as well, so I don't want too much green. I can remove a little bit of the green so that it's bringing the wheel around, or I can add more greens to the darkness or remove it from the darkness. And I can start working with the different types. Okay, so the blue in the bright areas are pretty good, but maybe in the dark areas I want it less. so that the blue is more of a bright moment in the bright spots, so that the colors I start to make the colors not fight so much between the dark areas and the light areas, so that the colors pop out a bit more. So in this case, let's go, whoops, I made it go into my last used, there we go. If I go back to my reds, I still think my reds are not good. There we go. Maybe put more reds into the darkness. So in this case, now I'm making my image more between a red and a purple, and with a tiny bit of blue as a complement. Or if I move it up, I make it more of a bluish tone, complemented by the yellow tone, so that it reads a bit better. And the red parts are kind of gray or muted. So with that, if I take a closer look at the image, oh, I didn't save it. God damn it. Edit. Redo. Edit. Redo. Ah, man. Why didn't I apply it? Adjust. Color. Red. Bring the red down a little bit. Maybe put it more in the darkness, and move it less, but not too much. And go to my blues, so as dark as less. And go to my greens, I don't want so much green. My green darkness is less as well, but in the brightness it is more. There you go. Okay, too much red. Go back here to reds, lower the reds a little bit. Okay, good. Hit OK this time. So this is the version where I tried to tone down the reds of the general scene so that the reds are more gray. So in this case, my dominant color is this blue color and this yellow color. They're complementing each other with this triadic purple color. So blue, purple, complemented by yellow. And this red color is no longer powerful because it is going through the center of the circle, which means less luminance, less saturation as we walk through the circle inside the conversation. So here in the conversation, the yellow color is complemented with the blue and the purple, and everything in the middle is dark or gray. And so this red color that I'm using to complement the world is talking in the conversation between the triangle, but it is no longer a dominant color, creating a dissonance, creating he's no longer fighting for attention. So because he's fighting with less attention, I can make the colors, it feels less noisy. So here we have too much light, too much red, and here, drop the light a little bit, and the colors that are important pop out a bit more so that my eyes see what it's supposed to see with the color contrast and the luminous contrast a little bit better than what it was before. And that is a kind of an interesting way of looking at color. So Steinn has mentioned something. It says, the curves with color kind of work like pulling and pushing the one color in the opposite and controlling where it's done on the luminance. I've used them mostly for color correction, but occasionally for adding more blue, orange, red in the shade, for instance, in a photo. Curves don't affect the saturation as much, more on the side of the luminance change, as an HSL or hue saturation luminance sliders affect most of the saturation, correct. So hue saturation luminance is HSL, and those are the controls that you use. Asling says his color go bro, or you don't. Your color correction is you just make the color pop and you saturate everything. Sometimes less is more. So for example, when I light the scene, I remove the color from most things and then I rework it. Oh, here's the rendered version. Very nice. Just save that. But I would need to go through my compositing and work in the shaders to kind of do what I just did before, to kind of make sure that the colors sing together in a better way. The luminance, the darkness, the highlights, the way I bring out the shapes of the character, things like that. Make sure that everything is a lot more evident of what I want to do. And I can obviously change the mood by changing the key light of this particular scene, or changing the lights of everything else. So I hope you find that as a quick introduction. Steinn mentions that he tends to edit his photos to be a lot more natural, but with more life, bringing the beauty out of it. Natural as in the eyes see it, not as a raw, unedited photo, but as how he would perceive it. Yes, that's a good way of working it.
I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm just jumping in. I got called away for a bit, so I may have missed this, but did you discuss how this might look to someone who is colorblind? I was talking about this with a friend earlier today, about how, like when you're playing a video game, if the teams are all just based on, like, you can only distinguish them by color, then you're sort of excluding people with color blindness, right? And there's different versions of color blindness. And so I'm just wondering, how would you make your art accessible to all sort of
In this case,
visual?
you
Yeah.
have to work with contrast either way. So for
Mhm.
example, let's take a look. If I have this frame here and I desaturate it, and so let's go to my filter and I go to my desaturation, like this. Out of my lightness or luminosity, can I still read it? And in this case, I can
The
see.
face is a little bit lost, I think, right?
That's right. So in this case, for example, the face has the same tone of gray as the wall hair. And on her hair, you can see it, and you can see like this blob of dark hair. But this face with the wall would need some work.
The taxi's very visible still, and you can make out her ear, and you know that it's a person.
But you can't see her nose or her face very well.
No.
So in this case, if I'm inside my 3D view here, this is where I would need to go inside my frame, and I would need to work on how I light it. So for example, maybe inside the shop, since okay, so this red is making things a little bit difficult, so I'm going to change it to more of make the mood maybe a little bit more greenish. So it contrasts with the purples and blues a bit more, yellowish maybe. And I'm going to bring down the strength of it so that it's not filling so much light. And then I'm going to use her rim light on the face, and I'm going to move it up just a little bit, as if she's lit out by the street. Maybe I'll change the size of the angle of that light a little bit. Maybe I'll bring it to the side a little bit more and then point to her head, so that now her face has a contrasting purple over bluish yellow. So the contrast on the rim of her face, or maybe even bring it out a bit more like this,
Right,
brings out her shape a bit better so that I can actually see what she's doing. Another thing that I noticed is really hard to see is like, what is going on with her arms? So I need to like either fix her pose a little bit, and if I fix her pose just a tiny bit, I also need to think about the light. So for example, the cell phone light is kind of I need to make sure that it is
that's a very big cell phone.
It's more like a tablet, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, that makes my cell phone look like tiny.
So in this case, I need to think about the light on her arm. Notice that the contrast of her arm is dark on dark. In this case, I need to use the same rim light that I had. I might copy it, and I'll use it instead pointing at the arm, so that this rim light is affecting the
That looks cool. That looks neon lights are like reflecting off of her or something.
Exactly. So there's this nice purple light up here, which
Yeah,
I can use as an excuse to paint her down here. I mean, it's not physically correct, but I'm using it as method to bring out her shape of her arms so that I can read her a bit better. Same with like maybe down below here. I could like on the bottom part of her body. It also gets lost in the darkness. So I need to...
That's cool.
Well, it's a bit too strong.
It is a bit too strong, but it looks... It definitely gives it a different mood. Right?
Exactly.
Like
So I'm going to probably bring this down a big chunk.
Anyway, I didn't mean to make you change your art. I just
No, it's
wanted to ask
perfect. I mean, this is part of the exercise. So now, like, this is a yellowish color. I can make it more yellow to kind of complement the other parts, or I can make it blue so it fits in with everything else, or I could desaturate it, make it just gray to just make the luminance saturation. So this is what...
painterly that's making the outside edge of her arm sort of look raggedy, right? Like
Yes, like a brush stroke.
Yeah.
So now I can use this light, and I can change the strength of this light a little bit to kind of bring out her shape by creating, regardless of the color, luminance, contrast, and shape language will help you read the image a bit more. And the spectrum, you need to make sure the spectrum of the colors and the luminance is working a lot better. So in this case, you can tell that her face is a lot lighter than the frame here in the darkness. Her hair is a lot lighter than the darkness of the shadows over here. This is where you use rim lights and fill lights. The shape of her body is now contrasted a bit better with the chair and the rest of the world. Like her body's still the dark shape, but the rest of the world is a little bit lighter. And same with the coffee cup and everything else is not fighting as much. And immediately,
sorry, what did you do to make it black and white again?
I did a render. If you're doing it inside compositing, what you would do is you create a hue, saturation, and value node, and then you just turn off saturation.
Okay, saturation.
So if I turn off saturation, it is now going to be luminance only. So here it is there.
Okay.
In the future of Blender, you'll be able to do this in the viewport without any problems. But right now you have to hit render.
In real time.
Exactly. Which is a nice segue to say, to talk about, to wrap up these colors, and then we'll talk a little bit with Iyad about the latest features of Bforartists. Slink has shared an interesting link or video about color by Captain Disillusion, which he explains it extremely well. And Steinn has another tip. He says, if I struggle with contrast and such, I turn off color and work with only the luminance. Then I tweak the brightness and colors of the hue and saturation and levels or luminance sliders. Slink mentions that Captain Disillusion is talking about color blinds a bit, and he says that it isn't a big problem and you should always focus on the luminance because that is what the humans are built to see. Yes. So Stein's process in Blender is it's the same process with his photos, since he's better with it with his photos. But in reality, he doesn't do a lot of post-processing, like pixel editing or adding more to it, or photoshopping. He does the most that he can do just from the actual 3D view, because it's all there in one layer, which I like as well. That concept of post-processing, yes, sometimes less is more, And if you have, it's like a garbage in, garbage out. The better your source file is with your lighting, the better or easier it is to post-process it. So if I go into my rendered view and take a look and do my comparison of the luminance between one and the other, my luminance of this character would be much easier to read than this one. So if I hit render again, it's going to take a moment. The legibility of that particular shot will be much better than what it was. I should have saved the render slot. Goddamn. So I use my lighting and I change my colors and try to work it directly in the viewport before actually compositing. Okay, so Iyad, are you still here? Are you available to chat a little bit?
Yes.
Oh, great. So Iyad, you've been working with Bforartists for a while now, and you've been doing the merges every week, and you've been also been developing the add-on for texture painting. And a quick note, so what do you think is new in the latest version?
So basically, one of the most recent stuff that we added is the brush toolbar, which is something that is more like a toolbar that you would find in Photoshop, for example, where you have all the tools available to you instead of the limited version that you have now in Blender. If you can show them this toolbar,
Yeah, let's
it
do
would be
that.
more clear to me.
Okay, let's load it up.
Yeah.
So version 3.21, let's load up the default. Just give me a second.
Yeah. So Blender themselves, they want to achieve this. If you remember, there is a developer page about it, a web page. They want to create something like this in the future, but until then, we have our stuff that's working now.
Yeah, that's right. Bforartists has a tendency over the years. This is now a 7-year-old project. And we had these tabs at the top for workspaces and tool shelves and things like that. Iconography in the tools, left mouse button as a default. For a very long time before Blender started doing it. And then they start to do it a bit later in a better way. But we work with that. Alright, so let's take a look at this new toolbar. So if I go back into paint mode, texture paint mode, oh, I need to turn on the add-on, correct? Preferences. Add-ons. And I check out the brush, write down brush, paint Bforartists brush panel. Turn that on. The hair and the brushes, I have this new panel here, which has divided all of the tools into separate brushes. All right, let's create a new texture, just a base color. All right, cool. So how does this work, Iyad?
So it looks better when you make the panel wider because it shows you the name of the brush.
There we go.
And this is good too.
Okay,
So basically, yeah.
Basically what?
It will list all the brushes that you have in your blend file dynamically. So if you have multiple brushes, you can switch between them without having to click a brush and then go into the menu for the brush mode, which is especially in the vertex paint and the weight paint. If you go into weight paint, you can see the difference better here.
Nice. And so these brushes they can store textures, they can store anything really. So for example, if I create a clouds texture with my brush and I use it in 3D space with my green brush. So as you can see, I have like this texture here and I start painting like this. Then I switch to my red brush. It's going to remember the settings that I have of that particular brush, and I don't have to go up here to the top left, go into a grid of many brushes, select the one, change it, go up here again, click on the brush up here and then change it, and go up here again, click on the brush again and then change it. I could just do it here directly with a single click without needing to go inside of a sub menu. And I can save my brushes and they will be dynamic depending on the way that I want. So I can create a new brush. I can call this brush Purple Air Brush with a terrible spelling, make it purple. Go into the mix mode. I'm going to make this.
And also, as I said, that Blender actually wants us to do something like this. I can grab the link.
Oh, cool! That'd be great.
But they didn't like it. It's in the future. Like all they have now is mockups, and we didn't like really achieve the full goals of what they want to do. But we did something that saves you a few clicks, just like you said. And this is especially in weight paint mode, where you have multiple modes of adding and subtracting weights. So you want to have all of these one click away instead of
Yeah, like you don't want to like go through this grid. Like the more brushes you use. There you go. I just made myself an airbrush. Then go back to my green texture, go to my red brush, then my purple airbrush. All right, so where do you see the future be for artists with this particular brush system? Do you think we should provide some default brushes in the future?
Yes, the default brushes is one thing, and another thing is that we should also add more modes to it. So in the sculpt mode, we still didn't we still don't have these. And also another thing is maybe we can have some systems similar to Photoshop or similar to what Blender wants to do, which is instead of everything expanded like this, we will have one button that says draw, for example, but you can open up that and open a menu, but then it will be the same as the default way. So maybe this way is better in some way. Yeah.
You can store your brushes. So I notice I can have my brush settings for soften. I can have my brush settings. Whoa, it's very slow. The smear settings, so I could have like a strong smear brush, or I could have a small smear brush, or a square smear brush, and it'll be easily accessible here from the panel instead of digging through this menu. Oh, another little detail is you can use custom icons as well. So let's go inside. Let's find an icon in my 3D stuff, my files for development, my files, icons. Let's just choose a random icon, for example, the bend icon. And now the bend icon, it changes in the actual tool shelf dynamically, how I want it to be. And now I can add my own icons to my own brushes, which is kind of nice. So if I make it nice and small, I can differentiate the brushes in a compact way, or use it as a list. Yad, this is really cool work. That's very nice. Let's take a look at some other features that we'll be working with. So if you want, there is a bit of a bug with this version. I recommend you download the dev build. Say that again?
No, please go on.
Okay. So with 3.21, though you can install it, if you do a search for an operator, a menu search, it will crash. If I do it now, oh, it didn't crash. That's weird. Okay, maybe it's a fickle bug. All right, I'm not sure how to reproduce, but the dev build would be more stable. Other things that we've been working with is within UV editing. We got all the new features from Blender, including different type. There's a new UV operator which I don't remember exactly, but let me just take a look at my quick notes. There they are. So we've got basically 62 fixes on top of Blender, including select similar from the UV editor, new geometry nodes, operators, the new vertex paint panels and the brush panels for vertex painting and texture painting. Not only weight painting, we also fixed up a bunch of different things in the animation editors to make sure things are going. We got the new volume cube node and geometry nodes, which is very good for VDB and other things like that. And we also fixed some bugs and other things like that. So it's a pretty interesting release. And hopefully in the next release, where there's a current project is we're working on default libraries, including a light library. So this should come and ship in the next version. And thank you everyone. So that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out till the end. And Nuri says it's very exciting to see the defaults. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for connecting and having the questions as well. Just to recap, today we had a nice piece of art with Steinn and Slink, and discussing their work of progress and also what inspired them with their art. We also had a quick look at how to use color and to work with color contrast and luminance contrast to help communicate the images in an artistic way. We talked a little bit about how to use other colors to communicate in a harmonious way by either desaturating the ones that are out of the dominant colors or working on their luminance to make sure that they talk together and sing together nicely. And last but not least, we had a talk with one of the core developers about the texture paintbrush panels and the vertex paint and the weight paint and the future of Bforartists coming soon. So thank you everyone. Thanks for the community. And if you want your art to be taken a look at next week or to be interviewed, feel free to drop your art in the Q&A&Critique chat. And if you like what I'm doing, this takes a big chunk of my work week away, so feel free to either support Iyad or myself with the development of Bforartists on Patreon or Ko-Fi, or support me directly either way to get these shows moving. So with that said, I'll see you next week, same time, same place, 2000 UTC every Friday.